You have the courage to sit in the front row, you can take the first question.
I'm a student at Middle College, and
I was just there in the Concord office.
I was just wondering, it seems that corporations have unlimited access to Congress. I was wondering what steps you would take to stop corporate cronyism from corrupting our government and our economy.
I have huge concerns about what's happened in this country, and it's very much so among certainly Democrats and increasingly among Republicans with this cronyism that we see. I can tell you, when I was serving in the Senate, you have a lot of contentious issues, but the ones that I just absolutely hated, they were the hardest to decide. People say, well, voting to go to war, was it a hard decision? It was not a hard decision. It was a weighty decision. But as far as making the decision, you could look at the facts and I felt comfortable that I was making the right decision based on the facts. The ones that are the most difficult are all of these bills that we have done to regulate and control sectors of the economy. Everything that I wasn't here for this, but Dodd-Frank is an example of that. The telecommunications bill. All of these bills that look at different energy bills. Why? Because you have huge interests at stake. And you've got all of these mega corporations, and they're all coming to you, and basically what it is, when you come down to it, yeah, there's some policy, but so much of it is clouded by who wins and who loses under which way you regulate this business. Instead of what is the free market way to do so? What is the way that sort of creates a level playing field? It sounds easy. Well, let's just create a level playing field. Sometimes it's really hard. What is level? Well, someone, oh, this is level. And they would say, no, it's level, but it's over here. And so, and that's where the cronyism comes in, is the fact that the government's doing this in the first place. In many respects, the government just needs to get out of doing this. I mean, look at Dodd-Frank as a classic example. I mean, we're destroying the economy of this country with Dodd-Frank. We're just destroying it. And it's all because the government has come in and basically tried to constrain the financial sector of this economy and make it jump through so many hoops and who does it help? It helps the big guys. I think I read today that since Dodd-Frank, only 2 banks have been chartered. 2. And we've lost over 1,000 banks. And 2 have been chartered. What does that tell you? So, it tells you that the big banks won. Because they were able to go along with all of this huge amount of regulation, which simply they just hire another person. It's no big deal. If you're a small bank, I mean, you have 5 employees, 10 employees, you hire another person, that's a huge burden versus, Citibank. That's the problem. And so I think it comes back to what the federal government needs to get out of and trying to I hate to say deregulate, because there's still regulation. It's just not regulation that favors one group, the big guys over the little guys. And here's the misnomer in American politics, is that the Democratic Party has become the party of the big guys. They are the party of big corporations. Big corporations now give more money to Democrats than they do to Republicans. They do. Why? Because the big corporations have figured out big government is good for them. Because big government crushes the little guy, little innovative guy, is the guy nipping at their heels, they don't want anything to do with the guy. And if big government come in there and make things really complicated, make things really difficult, we can handle complexity, right? It's the little guys that can't. And the banking industry is a classic example of that. But it's also happened in telecommunications. We just eliminate innovation. We do it in medicine. With pharmaceutical companies, we eliminate innovation because we make it so costly. How much it costs to get a drug approved by the FDA? We just, it's $1 billion, maybe more. What small little drug company can do it? So what do? You get bought up by the big guys, and they bring it through. You eliminate all that makes this country great, and I know people want laissez-faire, every business do whatever they want. But at some point, you have to just have the government back off a little bit from this. And if you want to have an impact, lobbying and all the other things, get government out of a lot of this big stuff, and you will have a lot less people paying lobbyists to lobby. Yes, sir. I promised you I'd ask you the question.
Yes.
Thank you for your service.
Santorum. I'm a World War II vet, one of 3 left in my town out of 155. Thank you for that. My concern is our borders. I call and write to my congressmen and my senators quite frequently, sometimes twice a week, and bring this up to them constantly. And my answer is that we will be looking into it. We'll keep your considerations in mind at our next meeting. Or we are going to study this. In the meantime, every Tom, Dick, and Harry is coming across our border. We've got ISIS that's sneaking in here. The state of New Hampshire right now has one of the worst heroin problems they've had in years. You watch the reports, once a month they give a report from the Manchester Police Department, and there's 100, 140 drug raids all over the state. Now you cannot have a country, when I was in the Marines and we set up a base, we had a perimeter. Our perimeter was our protection. Our perimeter is our borders. And unless we do something about that, these people are going to keep coming across here. Millions and millions of dollars worth of drugs coming in. You know this as well as anybody else does. And I don't see any action from Congress or the Senate. They keep putting this off and putting it off. And I think this is a lot of people down there that are making money, and they're not going to make waves when they're making money. And another thing that I don't agree is this new abortion bill here, this Planned Parenthood. You've probably heard the news all week long. They're paying these people to sell baby parts. And that's been going on for a long time. That's a criminal offense. And these people ought to be either executed or put in jail for life. They have to do something, and all I hear is rhetoric from Washington. And I get a letter, and there's nothing concrete. It's either we're studying it or we'll take it into consideration the next meeting. It doesn't amount to a thing. We've got ISIS, which is nothing but a ragtag bunch of guys over there. For crying out loud, the Marine Corps could have taken them out on Sunday afternoon. We paid millions of dollars to support the Muslim Brotherhood, which turned into ISIS. They're coming in here and they're walking into churches and malls and everything and just shooting people up. I'm fed up, completely fed up with it. And any congressman that doesn't want to do something about it, I'd like to get him out of office.
Okay, on the board. I'm going to try to remember all the things you mentioned, sir. I'll try my best.
I can repeat them.
He can remember, I might forget. On the board. In some respects, I agree with your Congressman and Senator. And here's why. Because the problem is not them. The problem is the President. The laws are in place. The money is there. He simply is not enforcing the board. So the Congress can pass more laws to tell him to do it, but if I've learned anything about this President, he doesn't feel compelled at all to obey the law.
That the Congress and the Senate should get together and either impeach that man or get him out of office.
With your help in 18 months, we're going to get him and everybody else out of office and put someone good, well, like me. On the border, it really is a matter of, I can't go back the last 3 presidents. I hate to say it, none of them really wanted to enforce the border. Because of the political downside. This is all politics. And the bottom line is that if you talk to people in this country who are recent immigrants to this country, most recent immigrants to the country want the border enforced. Because they waited to come into this country, which is not easy and it's not inexpensive, to come into this country and do it the right way because they respected America enough to obey her laws in the initial act in interaction with our country. And I can tell you, and back in 05 and 06, when I was still in the Senate, I introduced a border security bill. Back before this was as big of an issue as it is now. I have been adamant that we can and will use all the technology, physical barriers, and human resources necessary to secure the southern border. You have that commitment from me. I think people who know me well enough know that I can be sometimes thick-skinned when it comes to the criticism of the liberal media against me. And so they will come after me. But I don't really care. I care about doing what I promised the American public I would do when I run for office. And I will promise the American public that I will secure the southern border. And if the people of this country elect me, we will secure it. All right. So let me deal with related to that, the ISIS issue. Yes, there are terrorists coming across this border. There are people who, as you know, most of the people coming across the southern border now, according to reports, are not Mexicans. They're OTMs, other than Mexicans. Right? That's what they're called, OTMs. And many of them are not from Central and South America. They're from all over the world and from the Middle East. And so this is not just banter or hyperbole. This is a serious issue on our southern border that we have to take care of. As far as ISIS itself, I sincerely wish they were a bunch of ragtag folks. These are very, according to all the reports we see, these are pretty disciplined, committed fighters.
That's correct.
Who have increasingly better weapons to be able to confront us, in part because the Iraqi army abandons ship and leaves their weapons behind, like the other day when they left some vehicles behind for ISIS to capture. Yeah. So we have some serious issues with ISIS, and I believe that if we do not defeat ISIS, in particular, initially begin to take ground back from ISIS, that the incidents that you've been seeing here in America recently are only going to increase. And the reason I say that is if you understand Islam and how these people understand, how they understand Islam, and I know there are different variations, just like there is in the Christian faith, there are different variations of understanding of what the Holy Text said. But if you have a 7th century view of Islam, which is what ISIS has, and most of the radical Islamists, the jihadists have, then you have an understanding that to get people to follow you, you have to hold on and have a state. That's why they insist upon being called the Islamic State. Because if they're a state, then they can establish a caliphate. If they establish a caliphate, they can call on other like-minded Muslims to join them, legitimately, under their holy text. And if you are a like-minded Muslim, you are obliged, if this is a legitimate caliphate, to follow. Now, how do we know it's a legitimate caliphate? This comes to understanding what our president denies is the reality, which is we're at war with radical Islam. Because if you're not at war with radical Islam, then everything I'm about to say doesn't factor in your decisions. Because all you think of is, well, these are a group of people that want to have power, and they're encouraging people because, you know, maybe they like the fashion they wear. I don't know. I don't know why they think that the president thinks that people are joining this jihad. But it's not about Islam, according to the president. So these are just violent extremists. And the only way that we can contain them, that's what he believes. Right? So, why do these violent extremists, or why are these radical Muslims able to attract people? Because these people believe that this is a legitimate caliphate. How do they know it's a legitimate caliphate? It comes down to a very simple understanding of how Muslims, radical Muslims understand, and most Muslims understand the will of Allah. And this gets really somewhat esoteric, but it's sort of interesting. In the Christian faith, there is a great dispute about the nature of God. Whether God is all-powerful or whether God is all good. There were great philosophers and theologians throughout, and particularly in the 9th, 10th, 11th century, who debated this greatly to determine the nature of God. Is God all-powerful or is God all good? Right? By the way, they had the same debate in Islam, roughly at the same time. And so, what did the Christian world come down with? Anybody know?
All benevolent.
All benevolent. Not really. Close. What the Christian world said, God is all-powerful. Because indeed He is all-powerful, right? Anybody disagree with that? I mean, if you're a Christian, do you disagree with that? No. But He limits Himself to do only good. That's the Christian view of the nature of God. The Islamic view came down different. The Islamic view came down that God, because remember, their God is not a personal God. The Christian God is a personal God. It's a loving and personal God. Their God is a distant, powerful God. Right? And so they came down, at least the dominant strain, and there are other strains of Islam, by the way, it came down different. But their strain came down that God is simply all-powerful, and we cannot know. We cannot know what is good or bad. We simply know that whatever Allah wills is good. So, now think about this in the terms of the caliphate. How do we know whether the caliphate is legitimate? Under that understanding of God.
Because Allah wills.
How do we know if it's legitimate? How can we see? If you're a jihadist looking and say, how do we know if this caliphate's for real?
Take your territory.
If it's successful. If it's successful, God is blessing them. If it's failing, they're not with God. And so when the Obama administration says, all you have to do is contain them, what does that say? They're going to succeed. You know what they're going to do? They're going to attract a lot of people. And they are. Why? Because they're not taking their ground. And so I get this question all the time. Do you really want to put ground troops in there? Heck no! I have a son who's going in the military. Do I want to put troops in there? No! Do I want to let ISIS continue to hold that ground and attract more and more radicals around the world to their cause? No. Is anybody else going to stop them? No. If you saw anything from this negotiation with Iran on this, is that the rest of the world, even in the weakened, pathetic state that this president has our foreign policy, they'll still follow the United States. Because no one else wants to leave. They'll follow the United States, even in a deal they all know is a bad deal. They all know. The French fought us. The French fought us for a better deal. But they still went along. Why? Because the United States still leads. No one else will, because they can't. They don't have the capability to lead anymore. Their people are done. They're done with anything going outside of their own lives. They don't want to lead anything. And so if a leader in Europe tries to lead anywhere, they're done. They know this is wrong, but they have no power to lead. So it comes back to, like it or not, ladies and gentlemen, we're it. Evil is going to prosper unless we do something. So you can say, I don't want troops, I don't want to spend money. Fine. Live with the consequence that nobody else is going to stop you. No, repeat this. No one else will stop us. And if you think because they're halfway around the world they can't reach us, does anybody believe that now? For a long time people believed that. No one should believe that. Don't kid yourself. This is real. And so the answer is we do need to do what is ever necessary to begin to push ISIS back. Take them out of Ramadi, take them out of Erbil, take them and push them out of Iraq. And by the way, the deal we just signed with Iran makes it harder. And the reason it makes it harder is because those are all Sunnis. And the only people who are fighting right now are Shiites in Iraq, which makes it harder for the indigenous Sunni Iraqis to allow the Shiites to come in and cause problems now that we have partnered with the greatest Shiite threat the world has ever known. Yes.
Keeping with what we're talking about right now, I mentioned a while ago, and by the way, World War II Marine, Vietnam Marine.
Thank you.
And,
Appreciate your service.
how far are you willing to go? What is your plan to stop ISIS and Iran? Because you know this deal is BS. And would it involve the 1st Marine Division?
Well, here's what I've actually laid out something a long time ago. When I've been studying this stuff for a long time, ever since right after 9/11. I realized the president who I love, George Bush, he's a friend. But when he described the war as a war on terror, I knew he wasn't saying the whole truth. He wasn't lying. He just wasn't telling the whole truth. We were at war with radical Islam, and we needed to understand who they were. And so I spent a lot of time trying to understand who they were. And I've been working, and it's sanctions that are on Iran right now. I authored those sanctions and codified those sanctions. Some of them were existing, some were new that we proposed. But that was 12 years ago. I've been working on this stuff for a long, long time. And so I think I have a pretty good handle on who this enemy is. I'll share with you that ISIS put me in their magazine in April. I was in ISIS magazine in April. A picture of me and a statement that I made under the title, "In the Words of Our Enemies." No other Republican candidate, to my knowledge, has been featured in ISIS magazine. I can guarantee you the president isn't under anything saying the words of our enemies. And the reason they put it in there is because I accurately described who they were. And I laid out why we had to defeat them. They know who I am. And I know who they are. And I know how to beat them. And it is simply giving the resources to the people who are willing to fight them. The Kurds are willing to fight. Peshmerga, they're willing to fight. But you hear it all the time. I was just watching I was on PBS the other night. Yes, I was on PBS the other night. I did the news hour with Judy Woodruff, right? Yeah. And the show right before that was some freedom fighters, some people from the United States who actually volunteered to fight with the Kurds. I don't know if you saw that. Including a woman with 3 kids. How about that? That's wild. And you heard the Kurdish people telling the reporter, "We don't need these people." I mean, that was actually pretty rough on these folks because they came over to volunteer and said, "We don't need them, we don't want them. We're happy to take them, but we don't want them. Just give us weapons to fight. We don't need people, we need weapons. We got plenty of people who are willing to fight. But you're not arming us, you're not giving us the ability. We need to arm them." And the reason we aren't arming them is not because of our distrust of the Kurds, it's because of Iran. That's why. Because Iran has Kurds. The Turks have Kurds, and they're worried about arming Kurds. So it's another olive branch to the Iranian government, to the government in Iraq, which is controlled by Iran. So we need to arm the Kurds. We need to better arm the Jordanians. The Jordanians are willing to fight. They have a competent air force that can do things. They can probably help us in other ways. We have give aid to Jordan, but Jordan has, I think, close to 1 million refugees. I've heard numbers around those numbers. Have we increased our aid to Jordan? No. It's one of our best allies in the region. We haven't increased our aid. We haven't given them any additional military support. Another, Egypt. Egypt wants to fight. They want to fight ISIS in Libya, within their own country, as well as help, I'm sure, in other places. But we're holding back arms that we've already committed to Egypt. And we're holding them back, and you know why we're holding our arms? We've agreed to give arms to Egypt as part of our deal with Israel. Why are we holding it back?
They overthrew the Muslim Brotherhood.
Because they overthrew a radical Muslim government. Let me repeat that. The United States of America is not supporting the Egyptian government because they overthrew a radical Islamic government. You sort of wonder which side of the war we're on sometimes as a government. Well, General al-Sisi wants to help. We're not. We should be able, I mean, we're training, and you saw just recently, we trained another group of Iraqi soldiers to go in. But as I said before, I think that's a we've made our job so much more difficult because of this treaty. Why? Again, because we've sided with the Shiites. And we're fighting in Sunni areas. And ISIS is Sunni. And Iran is about to get a nuclear weapon. And Sunnis are worried that Shiites, been very clear, Iran's been very clear, they want to control the Arab world. And now they're going to be in a position to maybe do just that. And so you're going to have a hard time, increasingly, I predict, getting support within Anbar and other places to be able to throw ISIS out of there. And so it just puts the burden on these other countries and us as a result.
What about stopping Iran and getting a nuclear bomb?
As I mentioned, I've been sort of a Johnny One-Note on this for 12 years. During the Iraq War, I remember when I was running my campaign way back in 2006, I was on with Tim Russert and my opponent at the time, and we were in the middle of the Iraq War, and Tim Russert asked me, what's the biggest national security threat? And I said, Iran, and he corrected me. He said, oh, you misspoke, you mean Iraq. I said, no, I mean Iran. Because no one was talking about Iran. For the longest time, all you had to do is look at this oil-rich, gas-rich country that's run by a bunch of radical theocrats who are clearly pursuing a nuclear weapon. Why does Iran have all these nuclear centrifuges? Does anybody believe they are spending all this money because they want nuclear energy? When they export energy. Our president believes that. Our president believes that they're really not interested in a nuclear weapon. That they just have all this equipment because they're interested in nuclear power. You have to believe that to have signed this deal. No rational person believes that. But our president does. Our president does. He believes that Iran is, quote, a partner. A country that has conducted terrorist attacks in the United States, Beirut, the Cole, the men and women you see that you see out on our streets today who survived Iraq and Afghanistan, and you see them in wheelchairs, and you see them with prosthetics, you see them with horrible injuries. You know where almost all of those injuries occurred? Roadside bombs. You know who supplied all those bombs? Iran. Every stinking one of them. And what do? Nothing. Nothing. They attack us. They support our enemies. They try to destroy the state of Israel. They support Assad and his chemical weapons program. And what do? We make peace with them. We open up $100 billion plus so they can have a stronger economy. We get rid of the ban on conventional weapons. We lift them out of the ABM treaty so they can develop ballistic missiles. Not enough. We have said that we will take our technology that created viruses that have been used to slow down the Iranian nuclear program, and we will share with them the cure for those viruses. So their program can't be attacked. And then we're going to let the Russians send anti-aircraft and anti-missile technology so our missiles and our aircraft can't destroy their sites. We are making them a regional superpower in this deal. What do we get out of it? We get Barack Obama has a signed agreement as president. That's what we get. Barack Obama can say, I have peace in our time. That's what we get out of it. We get out of ego, is what we get.
Neville Chamberlain.
You're forgetting.
He makes Neville Chamberlain look like Winston Churchill.
He considered Yemen his biggest, foreign policy success.
Which is
and
now-
yet, who funds the rebels and takes part of Yemen?
Iran take funds for Houthis who now have operational control. Now this is, to talk about it, you almost don't believe it. You almost can't believe we would strike such a bad deal. And they said, well, they're shutting down centrifuges. But they're not dismantling it. Well, we're having inspections. You have to get 24 days. I wish my mom gave me 24 days to hide stuff in my room when I was a kid. Right? And that's if they ultimately, if they approve. We have no access to military sites. Right? We don't even know what secret sites they have, but here's what I do know. If they don't have a secret nuclear site, it'll be the first time in 20 years they don't have one. The answer is, what do you do? We have a Congress that is feckless. They knew this deal was bad. Maybe they didn't know it was this bad, but they knew it was going to be a bad deal. And what did they decide to do? Well, you say, well, what could they have done, Senator? I mean, the president's going to go forward and negotiate this. They could have demanded the president submit this as a treaty. You say, well, you can't make the president submit it as a treaty. If the American public demands it, he'll do it. If the American public can get riled up, here's the problem. They didn't think they could convince you. They didn't think they could beat the media. So they made a deal. They didn't have enough confidence that they had the ability to go out and fight for the stability and security of our country, for the safety and security of Israel. They didn't think they had the ability to go out and convince you to tell the president not to do this. And so they made a deal. And the deal they made was, all we will do is have a vote of disapproval. And all that does, it doesn't stop the deal. Even if we win. Even if they vote to disapprove, the president will veto it. Even if they override it, you know what it does? It stops the United States from removing sanctions. Only our sanctions. The rest of the deal goes in place. That's all it does. It's window dressing. Because if the United States is the only one that has sanctions, it'll have an impact. Don't get me wrong, it'll have an impact. It'll be good, but it won't be nearly what we need. The rest of the deal goes in place. That is why this gentleman back there is frustrated, and many of you are, because you elect these people, and then they go and they don't have faith in you. Really, that's what it comes down to. They don't have faith in themselves to be able to convince you, but ultimately that means they don't have faith in you. That you have the desire and willingness to stand up and fight a president who has gone rogue, and this president has gone rogue. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know if the people realize that within a few short years, if not before, they will have ICBMs. And those aren't for the countries around them in the Middle East. That's for us. Those missiles will be coming to us.
We have lifted the restriction on intercontinental ballistic missiles now a few years ago. But they've been doing this research illegally against UN resolutions and treaties for years. And so now we're going to lift it in, I think it's 8 years. You think they're not going to cheat in the next 8 years? I mean, they know it's going to be lifted. Oh, we've been cheating for 20 years, but since we're going to be able to do it in 8 years, we won't cheat anymore. People say, well, what can you do about it? Here's what you can do. I believe that this feckless Congress is going to continue to, maybe Democrats, maybe you're a Democratic senator. Here's what I would say to Senator Shaheen. You don't vote for this, you are now the senator from Iran. Because you're going to own Iran. Because everything Iran does from this point forward, you now are responsible. And that's what I would tell them. So you go ahead and look at that, look at those folks over there. Turn on the station and listen to what they're saying. Read a little bit about their history, Senator. And now you are partners with them, because that's what the president said, you're partners. So you're not going to partner with these people. So everything they do is your fault. Because you've now said it's okay to move forward on this deal. To me, that's the only way we have any shot. But even if that happens, as I said before, all we do is free sanctions on us, our sanctions, not the rest. So what happens? The deal goes in place. The deal will go in place. The President of the United States, at this point, given the way the Congress is set up, is going to move forward. And so what do? The next president will be faced in a situation where this deal will probably be in place now for 1.5 years. And let me predict some things. And I do so with, not a great degree of certainty, 99%. Iran will have violated this agreement. It will have violated this agreement, not just once, but multiple times, on many levels. Number two, Iran will increase its terrorist activity. Okay? It will increase its terrorist activity. Number three, the other countries in the region, particularly Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and others, will begin the process of acquiring and developing nuclear weapons. Okay? So that's where we'll be in January of 2017. And I would say at present at this point, and by the way, I would start, when's the election? November, anybody know? 7th? 8th? Nobody knows? I don't know. I mean, I'm what do you asking me for? Why do I should know this? I'm the guy who wrote it.
It's a Tuesday.
Yeah, it's a Tuesday. Good, thank you. So the first Wednesday after the first Tuesday, right? Because the first Tuesday after the first Monday, whatever it is. Whatever that day is, I'm going to start calling all of our allies. And I'm going to say from day one, I'm going to start calling, tell the president, look, I can't wait till January because this country is in danger. And we'll start talking to our allies and say, look, new sheriff in town. And this sheriff is going to lead, and we need you to follow. We need you to understand the danger that this country is. And begin, so on just January 20th, when the next president's sworn in, we're ready to go day one. And what we need to do to shut down this nuclear program. And there's no negotiation. You don't negotiate with terrorists. You dictate terms. You dictate terms. And if they don't meet those terms, you act. Yes, ma'am.
I agree with your positions. I want to know what your positions are. But until we get a Republican president, we can't make any changes. So every time a Republican says immigration, you're anti-Mexican. Every time you say Obamacare, you say you're anti-healthcare, you're anti-women. Every time you mention anything, you can't even get a word in. So what are the Republicans going to do to win this time? Different from last time.
Here's what I'd say. That attitude, and it's a pervasive one in the Congress, I refer to it as Stockholm Syndrome. That we've been beaten up so much by our captors, the media, that we refuse to fight anymore. We've been co-opted. So why are you here? Why are you here, Congress? I mean, if you're not willing to fight for any of these things, why are you there? I mean, me? I'm not afraid of losing, obviously. Right? I mean, I wouldn't be in this field if I was afraid of losing, right? I mean, if you had a fear of losing, you got 16 people in the field, you got folks raising $100 million. I wouldn't be standing here. I'm not afraid of losing or afraid of fighting the good fight. What do is I was on, I don't know if you saw this the other night, you can get it on YouTube. I was on Rachel Maddow's show the other night. Whoa. The only Republican to ever go on Rachel Maddow, just for the record. And you know what? It was an interesting conversation. Not all of it, but most of it. It was an interesting conversation. And she said something that what I was very pleased that she said. She said, I don't agree with him on anything, but he's an effective communicator. If you go back and look at how we get things done and how conservatives win, you should better have an effective communicator.
Yeah.
So here in New Hampshire, when you're looking at all these candidates, please don't send us a stiff. Right? Don't select a stiff. Don't select someone who can't put three words together. They may have a great record, but if they can't connect to the American public beyond the media, into the camera, or in other ways, then we're not going to win. I would agree with you. And the problem we've had recently, in my opinion, is that we haven't had people that have been able to connect.
Most of the general public is either stupid, lazy, or self-interested, and they aren't going to listen to the details that the Republicans put out. And we're going to sit here and worry about Hillary, and like 2008, Bernie Sanders is going to come from behind and do something that we can't afford to have happen. So what are you going to do?
Here's what I was saying. Look, I'm doing what I can do.
I know.
Here I am.
I know. You're talking to the choir. You're talking to the choir. We
Help me.
know.
Everybody sign up. We'll sign up sheets in the back.
Yeah.
Seriously. I mean, you have a disproportionate voice in the future of our country. You know that, right? That's why you're here. I mean, instead of doing something enjoyable on a Friday night. You're here, eating your spinach. And, oh, sorry, there's a few weird people. But you're here eating your spinach. Why? Because it's your responsibility. You take it seriously, and I love that about Iowa, New Hampshire. I love it. People sit for an hour and a half and watch a movie. They'll sit for 2.5 hours and watch a really good movie. So the idea that, people have short attention spans, they do if what you're saying is really boring. If you don't have really anything to say that connects with them. But if you do connect with them, I can sit in an audience of 100 people, I'm exaggerating for media purposes, of 100 people, I don't know how many people, but anyway, and you can actually hold their attention if you're actually saying something interesting, and you're connecting. And that's what you got to find. If you go back from the time of television, every presidential candidate that's won the election has been the better communicator of the two. Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. Go back and look. Everyone has been better. You say, well, wait, George Bush Sr. was a terrible communicator. He was horrible. Michael Dukakis. I'm getting the wrap-up sign. Either that or either that or I just hit a home run. I don't know. Either wrap it up or I hit a home run. All right, Karen, you can pick the last one.
The young lady working here.
Are
Hi,
you with a particular news agency or?
Janae today. Janae today. It's my own thing.
Oh, it's your own thing?
Yeah.
Are you a New Hampshire person?
Yes.
Oh, wow, good. Young journalist.
I'm trying.
Good.
I was on your website today and I saw the quote that says, Rick Santorum is committed to restoring the American dream for hardworking Americans, and I was wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
Well, I talked a lot about that at the beginning, with really trying to create an economy that's going to grow. I mean, we're talking about a flat tax. We're going to be introducing, I'm still tinkering around with it a little bit, we'll be introducing it very soon. It'll be a flat tax, the rate will be about 20%, give or take, but around 20% is what we're looking at. And it'll be a tax on all income. They'll be the same. Corporate income, 20%. Individual income, 20%. Dividends, 20%. Capital gains, 20%. Everything's 20%. So there's no monkeying around and moving money here or there for investment purposes or whatever. Everybody gets treated the same. We'll make sure that no one, particularly lower middle income, is paying more taxes. But what we will assure is that we're going to grow the economy a lot faster. We're going to create better incomes from everybody because the numbers we're seeing are pretty dramatic increases in growth, pretty dramatic increases, millions of new jobs as a result of what this is. And we're specifically focused on the manufacturing sector by allowing for expensive capital equipment. So we're going to encourage manufacturers to be here. We're going to have a repatriation provision. There's about $2 trillion in profits that primarily manufacturers have in banks overseas where they made products over there, but they don't bring it back because we have a 40% corporate tax rate here, and they would have to pay additional taxes on it, so they just leave it there. And now we're going to have to bring it back, maybe a 5 to 7% tax, so we'll take some money, but it'll encourage potentially trillions of dollars back to America to invest in creating American jobs. So I'm absolutely convinced that if you give us the opportunity to have at this, and you have a president of the United States that's going to companies, international companies, companies located in other countries, and saying, I want your business here. We'll work with you because we want your business here. And we're going to protect your intellectual property. We're going to have lower energy prices. We're going to have competitive corporate rates. And we're going to get rid of mandatory health care with Obamacare. We're going to be able to do a lot of things to get people in very either third world countries, probably not, but in second and first world countries that we compete with to come back here and locate in America. That's how we're going to help working men and women rise in society. With that, let me just thank you all for being here. Thanks for